Hello and welcome to the Woke is Broke podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Stanko, and I apologize for the late episode this week. If you guys watched our episodes last week, you know that I'm getting ready to move to Nashville, Tennessee in another couple of days, so I've been running around like a nut trying to get everything done in time. But in any event, we are back for today. And some highlights. Chris Cuomo, we covered this last week, was put on indefinite suspension only to be officially fired over the weekend amidst reports of sexual assault, him sexually harassing other people. You know, it is remarkable just how sexual harassment seems to be prevalent in the Cuomo family. Apparently, a Cuomo in the hand is worth two sexual assaults in the bush. I don't know. But he's gone, so bye-bye Fredo, officially for good, thank God. His book deal was canceled. He's no longer appearing on his Sirius XM radio channel. He's gone from that as well. He's been pretty much blacklisted everywhere at this point. And I can't say I'm too sad about that. I know some people are hesitant to kick a guy when he's down. I understand that in principle, I do. But I do believe some people are worthy of further criticism, even if they're having a tough time right now. Chris Cuomo's having a tough time right now because of the decisions that he made. And we should be able to recognize that and criticize him for those decisions because he's not a good person. He is not a good person. All right. He's a pinhead and a coward. And now he's off the air and now he's lost just about everything else. And I don't have any gripes about that. I don't feel bad for him at all. He's just getting what he deserves at this point. He's living in the bed that he made at the end of the day. So that's for Chris Cuomo. But our main story for today is, you just gotta love when these stories, come across your phone, right? That just make your blood boil. It really does. I'm talking about a journalist, journalist named Erin Aubrey Kaplan, who wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times, I believe it was, describing an experience she had in her neighborhood where she lives, right? She set up a free library stand. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically, think of it like a mailbox that you put on the edge of your lawn, right? And there's like a series of books in this little mailbox. And, people can come up, people who live in the area, they can come up, they can leave one of their own books and take one that's in there. It's a nice little thing, for neighbors to do, to read and share books and everything. It's a cute little thing you do in the suburbs, and that's fine. In this opinion piece that she writes, she kind of goes over an experience she had with certain neighbors who came up to use the free library that she set up for everyone in the neighborhood to use. Here's what she had to say. Then one morning, glancing out my front window, I saw a young white couple stopped at the library. Off to a great start so far. Instantly, I was flooded with emotions, astonishment, and then resentment, and then astonishment at my resentment. It all converged into a silent scream in my head of, "Get off my lawn." So she's a racist. Oh, okay, so she's a racist. All right, now that that's been established. What I resented was not this specific couple, it was their whiteness. My feelings of helplessness at not knowing how to maintain the integrity of a black space that I had created. I've talked about this before. There is no difference between this language and the Jim Crowe segregationist language of the 50s and 60s. None. Nobody ever thinks they're the bad guy, right? And I just love the way that she phrased this, right? It wasn't them that I resented specifically. It was their whiteness. It was the color of their skin. It wasn't personal. It was business. I have no animus against them personally. It was just the color of their skin that I hated because of all the evil that represents. You want to talk about evil? Let's talk about blatantly and openly admitting that you disdain them because of the color of their skin. That is evil. She goes on to talk about she calls the white flight of the 50s and 60s, right? In which, when blacks and Hispanics would start moving into neighborhoods, white people would move out, right? This big white flight, right? And she's talking about that. She says, as more black families moved to the neighborhood, white people moved out in the 50s and 60s, moved out in droves. that white flight forged the chiefly black and brown South Central of popular imagination and created similar demographics in other city neighborhoods across the country. But now, as younger generations of white people move back to the neighborhoods their parents shunned, and the phenomenon I call white return, instead of the blatant racism of what happened at Bruce's Beach, we now have gentrification. As white people move back to the neighborhood their parents shunned. Okay, Jordan Peterson talks about this, the idea that you can lay this collective crime against an entire group of people, regardless of the individual innocence of the people who make up that group, is the most racist thing anyone could do. She doesn't know these people from a hole in the wall, and yet she's assuming that because they're white, that they are just as guilty as the white people that she's talking about who fled, neighborhoods in the 50s and 60s in this white flight, that they are collectively guilty of that crime because they look like people who did shitty things from decades ago. That is evil on its face. And she goes on. She doesn't stop there. She calls. In 2021, it has become increasingly important to maintain and grow black space on its own terms, right? So it's not that she's an outright evil racist for hating white people, right? It's that white couple, they are racist for even living in the neighborhood, and they need to maintain and support and grow black space. They need segregated neighborhoods. They need segregated dorms on colleges. We already have that, right? We need segregated classes. You might remember that happening over the summer in Georgia, right? In elementary school, in which children were actually segregated into black classes and white classes, right? This is their racial equality. It hasn't changed in 60 freaking years. All right. The only thing that's changed is the race that they're putting the emphasis on right now. And why is that? Maybe it's because when you take minorities and your infinite and virtuous wisdom, right, as a white liberal, and tell that minority that they are never going to achieve anything in their life because of white people, maybe you're not empowering them to do something great with their life. Maybe you are raising them up to be a racist. Maybe you are raising them up to blame white people for every bad decision that they made. Maybe you are raising them up to say, instead of saying, life hands us a bad hand sometimes at the beginning of our lives, and sometimes that we're dealt a bad hand later on in life. And maybe that isn't white people's fault. Maybe that's just because life is difficult and life sucks sometimes. But no, you are teaching them to say, no, it is white people's fault. No, it is Christians' faults. No, it is conservatives' faults. No, it is the fault of literally everyone and everything other than myself. You know what abolishes racism? Is individualism. It's accountability. It's aspiring to be the best that you can be. And sitting here in a room hating people, hating them for no reason other than the color of their skin, for no reason other than their religion, right? For no reason other than who they voted for in the last election. That is evil, it is wrong, and it is tearing this country apart. And there is nothing virtuous in anything in that article. Nothing whatsoever. Every word in that article was complete and utter bilge. It was evil bilge, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. And like I said, it's just amazing just how little has changed in 60 years' time. We're constantly being told, right, that today's day and age is indistinguishable from the Jim Crowe of the South, that black people are still being oppressed. No, we are still in the Jim Crowe South in a sense that Democrats are still running the race line, are still teaching people to hate one another because of the color of their skin, are still teaching them to go out and shun and shame people into leaving schools, into leaving restaurants, into leaving neighborhoods because they don't have the right skin color, because they don't have the right politics, because they don't have the right faith. That part has remained the same. All right. In an unofficial capacity, all right, we hear about systemic racism. There's no racist laws on the books, obviously, but there is a certain societally accepted racism. Absolutely. How else would you explain that journalist feeling perfectly comfortable writing an opinion piece in the New York Times, openly admitting that she resents this couple for being white? How is that a thing? How do you get to say that and you're not shunned on a social level, on a public level? If I were to write an opinion piece for the New York Times in which I said, I don't like black people, I don't like the black people who live across the street from me because they're black, Do you think I would have any kind of life after that? Do you think I wouldn't be shunned, that I wouldn't be shamed, that I wouldn't be exiled from the public sphere? Of course I would be. Of course I would be. And yet leftists, Democrats, progressivists, right? The big progressivists searching for virtue and progress, they have no fear of accountability, no fear saying this ugly, evil crap on a regular basis. Because yes, societally speaking, there is a certain kind of racism that's perfectly tolerable. There is a certain kind of religious bigotry that is perfectly tolerable. There is a certain kind of bigotry that is tolerable. And it's against people like me. It's against Christians. It's against conservatives. It's against white people. People who hate me because of the color of my skin. There is nothing virtuous in that. It's a tale as old as time. And it's one that we need to stop telling. It is one that we need to shift away from. But that isn't going to happen as long as society just says, oh, I don't agree with that. I don't like that kind of language. But, it doesn't affect me, in the grand scheme of things. I'm talking about apathy. I'm talking about people who have spent years sitting on the sidelines as things went from bad to worse. Why? Why? Because it was convenient. Because it's hard informing yourself, because it's hard to get involved, because it's scary to speak up and use your voice. But guess what? If not you, then who? If not you, then who is going to get involved? Who is going to stop this kind of bigotry from being propagated? Who is going to call out and hold people accountable for saying crap like that? If not you, then who? And if you don't, then what happens? What kind of world are we living in? What kind of world are we setting up for our children? Not anyone I want to live in. It's not anyone that I want to offer my kids down the line. More and more people are waking up. More and more people are getting involved. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that in droves right now, right? We're seeing companies start up. We're seeing websites start up. We're seeing movements rise up. We're seeing people getting involved in politics who wouldn't have even have dreamt about it just a couple of years ago. And I'm one of those people. I never thought I'd get involved in politics. I never thought I'd be doing this show right now. That wasn't anything that was even remotely on my mind a year and a half ago. And then until all of it changed just like that. Because some things are worth speaking up for. Some things are worth taking a risk for. Some things are worth sacrificing for. And the integrity of the soul of our nation is one of them. And the integrity of the future that we're going to offer to our kids, that's another. That's a biggie. All of us have different opportunities, different skills, different talents, different passions. And I would say that right now, all of us have an obligation to figure out just something, even if it's just one thing that we can do, one stance we could take, one fight we can enter, to speak out, to get involved, to try and make a change, and recognize that, yeah, you might fail. You might fail. Maybe your efforts don't do anything at the end of the day. Or maybe they will. But you're never going to know unless you take that chance. And it's a chance and it's a choice that only you can make. But guess what? You matter. Your talents matter. Your voice matters. Because this is a nation built by founded on minorities, but the first and most important minority of all is the individual conscience. The individual. You. Anyways, we will be back at a later time, but I will leave you with that. I am Joshua Stanko, signing off on the Woke is Broke podcast, saying stay safe, stay informed, and God bless, guys. Hope you have a good one.